a financial figurine, an income profit manifesting machine. The only value they said I have is green. They called me a fiction, they called me extreme. They called me a pimp, as a matter of fact. They painted me violent, they painted me black.
These adversarial lawyers. These adversarial lawyers. I mean, it's obvious to me. That's why it's so disingenuous. It's hard to take them sincere. Like, I come from the streets. On the streets, it's obvious when somebody's disrespecting you, when somebody doesn't have good intention. So it's obvious when they're not working for peace or a common ground or to de-escalate. All the things that go easy peasy in everyday family court, being argumentative and just working to find conflict and discordance and inflate and exaggerate and inflame and just degrade and belittle, much less for enormous profit. And so it just seems disingenuous that what I see in family court and the behaviors and what's allowed and the type of arguments and the type of paperwork and the type of ongoing, never-ending family litigation, and to have no accountability from the judges and to have no chastising of attorneys by judges, or very rarely. We try not to speak in absolutes, and so I check myself on that, but very rarely are you going to find a sanctioned attorney, for being hard-pressed and bulldogging and, putting the argumentative nature above common ground, compassion, and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, the things that any true conflict resolution on the street demands, especially to keep from going to violence. So I just think it's disingenuous. May it please the court, and praying to the court and your honor and all of it. It's just the show of like such prestige and being articulate and being civilized, and it's supposed to be based on morals and values and equality, much less in a constitutional republic where these people really work. They're public servants. They should be underneath the public. And it's not like that at all. And I'm not saying I should walk into court and the judge should be kissing my ass. But to have it be so reversed, and to be somebody who represented himself for a large portion of my family court trials, I got very little respect, much less help and consideration from any of these judges while I was in propria persona. They wouldn't even recognize me as in propria persona, in fact. The pro se or any other thing they want to label you as to try to diminish your status. But yeah, the false prestige seems so disingenuous, especially when what makes people's character and good merit is class, is compassion, with wisdom, intelligence, innovation. These are the things I value. Consideration for cultures and ideas and norms and traditions outside of your own. The ability to understand the diversity that makes up a base foundation of what's acceptable in life with humanity, much less to be in a position of judging that and arguing against it as the attorneys do, putting it in the hands of the judge. So I just find it very disingenuous when the merit and the attributes that we would expect from a high culture, high positioned, honorable anybody are lacking and void. And so I think to presume that an adversarial structure for high dollar paid profit attorneys with some language that only attorneys and legalese can understand, that's the best we've been able to do up to modern day, is insulting to my intelligence, because there's something to be said for simplifying all things that need to be communicated and understood to the level of what a child could understand. I'm not saying all contracts and equity and the intricacies that make up property law and civil and criminal claims against everybody else, like that it's to be diminished and belittled to something so simple that a child could do. But when you're in it and you see this other polarity extreme where it's made so complicated and unnecessarily adversarial and dragged out, is the opposite of the simplicity. The legalese is ridiculous, and the format is ridiculous. Not all, substance over format should mean something. The paperwork is great. I get having a system. I get why we drive on one side of the road. But there's something to be said for common law. And, until you've injured or infringed on somebody's rights or injured their person or their rights or their property, a lot of this legalese, in my opinion, gets lost. And a lot of the judgments of the public in what would be a grand jury or just a true jury of your peers, that gets lost. And all the power gets put in to fighting attorneys who got ego problems and are super fallible, if not morally questionable, and the judgment of one human being, a judge, to hopefully make the right decision, usually with very limited amount of information and evidence. And so, no, that's not what I'll settle for. That's not what I'll believe is the best we can do in 2017, and the best refinement we can do, and the best feedback we can give for what is and is not working, much less the adjustments that we can make around that. And I think getting rid of the adversarial lawyers is a simple one. That's been my recommendation. Move to one attorney. If you're going to fight in court, you both pay one attorney, and most of these attorneys become judges anyhow. And so he's a pre-judge. He knows what the judge is going to do. These attorneys spend their whole life arguing for what they think the judge is going to do. So instead of arguing against each other, you have one attorney per case. He represents both of the parties. This is in family court specifically, not criminal court, or even all this other civil claims. But family law specifically, where these families are being broken unnecessarily and sucked of all their money and resources and energy and emotions. It's just unnecessary. And I think getting rid of the adversarial structure of the two-attorney system is a simple solution. Get one attorney, represents both parties. He gets the facts from both. He has a pre-trial basically with himself and the two petitioner, respondent, whatever. I think the petitioner respondent is still sort of adversarial, just even in the wording. But nonetheless, this pre-attorney, pre-judge attorney can do the work, not represent one party, not have a vested interest in hiding information from one party and inflating their good attributes, or hiding information from the other party or inflating their good attributes. It's like, cut it out. Quit doing that. Quit doing warfare in family court. If we're about justice and getting to the truth and having accountability and being authentic, then let's do things that represent that. I haven't learned that from any of these lawyers that I've seen or hired myself. Their tactics, to me, are a sad excuse for what we can do as a community, as families, much less as a judicial structure and system. in America in 2017. So that's my solution. Let's cut it out. Let's cut out the fighting. Let's cut out all the incentives to have people fighting. That's profit can be one of those. So let's knock it off. And let's get rid of the adversarial lawyers. And let's chastise when you see a lawyer that isn't trying to find common ground, but is trying to be argumentative or inflammatory or just hateful, and tactless, and just not contributing to the common ground, to positive solutions. I feel like that's easy to see in society. And these judges, when they see it, they should be like, hey, knock it off. That's not what this is about. We're not about fighting in here. We're not trying to make people look stupid. We're not trying to get these broken families even more angry at each other, more resentful, more confused and frustrated. We're trying to be a third party that can help neutralize. I mean, isn't that the reason they're claiming they're not going to bring emotion from their end into the equation? And yet that same emotion that they're not bringing in fact, when it does come in, it's usually through resentment, frustration, and tension, because they're overworked and overpaid. I don't know how that works, overworked and overpaid. But these judges that feel like their caseload leaves them screw-faced and sourpussed and frustrated and, in my opinion, non-productive then. When you bring that to the table in any relationship, it's not going to be the best of you. And so I get the mental health industry, the medical industry, the law industry, these things where you have to be very mindful of how much of self and emotion and attachment you bring to the table so you don't lose yourself in it. But in family court specifically, I think they're way off the mark. I think they're far too emotionally removed, robotic, as though this law and the interpretation of the law that's ebbing and flowing and really fluid, like most of life, that isn't very robotic, could be interpreted that way. It's silly. And in many cases to the family, it's devastating. In my case, I feel that it's been devastating. And so instead of just trying to bitch and woe is me about it, I try to be solution-oriented. And this is one of the solutions I have, is let's do something to remove the adversarial attorney incentive. There's too many incentives for them to continue to get paid, inflate bills. The first attorney I had, I mean, they were double billing me. It was so unethical. And when I called them on it, and my ex-wife works for a law firm, she's a paralegal, and so they were helping just go over a bill so I could understand the wording and looking at things that were double billing. And it was like when I called the attorney on it in the firm, they didn't even challenge it. They just wrote me a check and agreed. And I fired them on the spot. Yeah, obviously, who you're going to pay somebody that's double billing a family, a human in crisis? It's I have no idea how common my experience is on so many levels, but I don't care if it's just me. If it's just one time, I would never want anybody to go through what I've gone through, and I would want people that I've seen be far below the standard of ethics and what we would expect of people in these positions of power, where we'd expect them to be. And so finding some solution and some form of accountability, and I know there's stuff out there, appellate court and higher review. I still have, in my position, in my case, many questions and critiques on the feasibility of even those venues, though. But when it gets to just some of these adversarial lawyers, slimy lawyers, I've had slimy lawyers, and it's been important to me just to get an ethical lawyer, and that was hard. And it didn't, I think it was detrimental to me. And I feel that it's because of the structure of this adversarial judicial attorney system. And so, as somebody that really wants to be ethical and is willing to look at my flaws and mistakes and where I could have done better and where I might have done things differently, now that I even know what the family court system is, because I don't see integrity and honesty and good morals and values rewarded. And that might just be my specific case, but that's why I want to bear testament to what my situation is in Clackamas, Oregon, you know, right next to Portland. It's been atrocious. So feeling like, having researched much since my involvement into the family court system, that I don't feel like my situation and position is really all that unique. And so I actually feel like a drop in a bucket as a male who's received no rights and no value from a system that apparently barely recognizes our worth outside of a financial calculation. So, simple solutions. I want to be productive. I don't want to just gripe, bitch, and moan, but I want to offer solutions, welcome solutions, welcome critiques, as long as they're positive and constructive with good intent. And so I try to have good intent and take my lessons and learn from them, be an innovator the best that I can, and try to uplift myself and those who walk with me and will come after me. So that's my simple solution. Let's nix these adversarial lawyers. Some of them are straight wicked. Some of them are good. The structure and the system is flawed to begin with. So let's refine it, reform it, improve it, start with self, move forward, be good people. Be good to yourself, be good to the world. My name is MCAD, aka Rad Dad. Peace and love.
It's all coming together right here now. It's all coming together right here now. It's all coming together right here. Who's that? It's love. Can you feel it coming through that? Conscious revolutionary music. Yeah.